You arrive for work just as the sun begins to break over the horizon. It's cold and almost eerily quiet. As you pull up to the site gates, you spot a familiar looking car parked by the side of the road, its windscreen white with frost. As you unlock the gates, the door of that familiar car opens and out steps one of your colleagues wrapped in a blanket. Did he arrive early to beat the morning traffic? Has he had a tiff with the missus? Is he being paid to stay in digs but pocketing the money to boost his wages? Couldn't he face the commute home last night? Or is it something else? In the period from 2024 to 2025, the UK construction industry reported a record output totaling more than £140 billion. Directors and senior officers command huge salaries and receive multi-million pound bonuses. Many of the UK's best performing construction companies pay handsome annual dividends to their shareholders. But the sweet life in the boardroom is being offset increasingly by a bitter aftertaste among the industry's workforce. With the cost of living rising, demolition and construction workers are finding it increasingly difficult to make ends meet. The construction charity, the Lighthouse, is generally associated with assisting families of workers injured or killed on UK sites. But increasingly, they're having to focus their efforts elsewhere. Over the past year, the charity has provided almost 6,000 emergency meals for the men and women in this industry and their families. That's a disturbing statistic, yet it's merely the tip of the iceberg. An increasing number of demolition and construction workers can no longer afford to put a roof over their heads. To put it bluntly, working in one of the UK's most vital industrial sectors no longer guarantees access to stable, secure housing. When we picture homelessness, the collective imagination often turns to rough sleepers on city streets, bodies huddled under blankets and cardboard boxes. But the broader, more insidious crisis is entirely hidden from plain view. In-work homelessness encompasses individuals who maintain active full-time or part-time employment but lack a fixed, regular and adequate nighttime residence. They're swallowed by the system of temporary accommodations which housed a staggering 131,000 households by March 2025. The sheer scale of this crisis is deeply alarming. Recent analysis by the Salvation Army identified 56,000 workers across the UK who were officially registered as homeless between April 2023 and March 2024. Strikingly, 32,000 of those individuals were in full-time employment, proving that even a standard 40-hour work week is often no longer sufficient to secure a basic home in the current economic climate. Within the demolition and construction trades, where work is inherently site-based, physically demanding and transient, workers are incredibly vulnerable. Because of the stigma attached to their situation, many construction workers deploy invisibility strategies. They live in unconventional places, tents, squats, or their own vehicles, while continuing to report for demanding physical labour every day. How does a skilled demolition expert or construction worker in a £140 billion industry end up living in their car? The answer lies in the institutionalized instability of modern employment practices. The industry has a long history of casual labour, but the current era has weaponized this through the widespread proliferation of zero-hour contracts and umbrella companies. Umbrella companies frequently force workers into sham self-employment status, where they become liable for both employee and employer national insurance contributions, drastically reducing their actual take-home pay. Furthermore, holiday pay is often deducted, leaving workers with complex tax statuses and vastly reduced net incomes. Similarly, the use of zero-hour contracts, which offer no guaranteed hours and allow firms to demand or discontinue work at a moment's notice, has quadrupled in the UK over the past decade. This structural casualisation creates a catastrophic barrier to housing. To secure a tenancy in the private rented sector, landlords typically require 6 months of steady pay slips or a permanent employment contract as a prerequisite. Agency based, subcontracted, or 0 hour workers simply can't meet those rigid conditions, effectively locking them out of the housing market entirely. This double jeopardy of insecure work and private renting means that when a temporary demolition contract ends or a construction site unexpectedly shuts down, these workers face an immediate, terrifying risk of eviction. In fact, the end of a private rented tenancy was the leading cause of homelessness for nearly 40% of households seeking council support in 2024 to 2025. Even for those who managed to secure a tenancy, the divergence between housing costs and real earnings is an ever present threat. By 2023, the average home in England cost more than 8 times the average full time salary, a massive leap from just 3.6 times in 1997. While construction materials and top level revenues have inflated, these financial gains have absolutely not translated into housing affordability for the workers on the ground. With home ownership entirely out of reach, the private rented sector has become the default housing solution for the demolition and construction workforce. But rents have soared rapidly since 2020, while local housing allowance rates, which dictate housing benefit levels for low income earners, remain frozen for several years. That freeze created a debilitating shortfall of approximately £100 per month for many working renters, slowly but surely pushing them into arrears and ultimately out onto the streets. Furthermore, the broader cost of living crisis has severely eroded any marginal wage gains. While the construction output price index grew by 3.4% in 2024, workers have seen the rising costs of fuel, food, and energy consume their paychecks. They're left entirely unable to save for the hefty security deposits and the first month's rent required to escape high cost, low quality temporary arrangements. The psychological devastation of this crisis can't be overstated. The demolition and construction industry is already battling a tragic mental health epidemic, with suicide rates historically surpassing fatalities from physical site accidents like falls from height. Housing insecurity acts as a massive multiplier for this intense occupational stress. Research highlights a statistically significant link between job insecurity and self-reported depression. Workers living in homelessness carry a pervasive sense of shame, forcing them into a dangerous silence. The daily physical toll of maintaining a professional facade while sleeping rough is immense. Chronic sleep deprivation linked directly to housing insecurity is thought to cost the construction industry an estimated £1.3 billion annually through lost productivity and heightened on-site accident risks. In addition, the lack of basic kitchen and laundry facilities in temporary housing leads to severe food insecurity. Apprentices and low-paid labourers frequently skip lunch to save money, significantly impairing their cognitive and physical site performance in an environment where a single mistake can be fatal. And there's a bitter, bitter irony in all of this. The UK government swept to power on the impossible promise of building 1.5 million new homes in the space of just 5 years. Now, there's a very strong likelihood that at least some of those homes will eventually be built by people sleeping in their cars because they can't afford a home of their own.